speaker, so that's why I just have a monotone voice usually most of the time. So I'm sorry about that.
I'd have to lecture.
Here we go.
ਇੱਕ ਓਂਕਾਰ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਆਦਿ ਗੁਰੇਨਮੈ ਜੁਗਾਦ ਗੁਰੇਨਮੈ ਸਤ ਗੁਰੇਨਮੈ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰਦੇਵ ਏਨਮੈ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. I didn't really hear a good response. Are you still sleeping? Let's try again. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh. There we go. We're talking about Chardi Kala today, so let's all be in Chardi Kala. I was talking earlier to Harcharan Veer Ji, and he mentioned that since I'm a physician, I'm a doctor, that as doctors do when we give lectures, we talk about, well, let's define what the condition is, and then let's see what the symptoms are, and then how can we cure it. So I don't want to disappoint anybody, so let's talk about Chardi Kala and see how we can define Chardi Kala. Now I'm going to try and make it more interactive, so I like audience participation. This is not just a lecture, it's not just for you to listen to me. Hopefully you will learn something that we can all apply in our lives. Now there are many Gursikhs here who could have done a much better job because they're actually living the life of Chardi Kala. But I guess since they're living their life, they don't want to talk about it. So the duty was given to me to talk about it. So since that probably means that I'm not living the life. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. But let's first talk about what Chardi Kala means. So I want to see what do you think? Let's define Chardi Kala. What does it mean to you? So anybody? Yes. Always accepting God's will. Okay. Now, what does that mean, though? How do you accept God's will? What else? What does that mean, living in God's will? Come on, you've heard of Chardi Kala. You talk about Chardi Kala all the time. Let's see what does it mean by living a life in Chardi Kala, by living a life according to God's will. Yes. Always trying to make yourself better. Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
Being optimistic.
Being optimistic.
In a bad situation, always seeing the brighter side of life.
Always seeing the brighter side of life. Being optimistic. Living in your higher self. So there are many things. Chardi Kala is a concept that is not easily defined. It's all of those things and much more. So in the next few minutes or so, we'll try and see how we can characterize what the essence of Chardi Kala is. What does it mean? It's very easy to say, well, living in your higher self, always living in God's will. But what does that mean in practical terms? How do we incorporate that into our lives? Now, you could bring some people down here, and they're living their life. I'm sure you've met some of them early, in this camp already. And just looking at their life and see how they live their life and what happens to you when you are in presence of those kind of people, you will understand and get some essence of what Chardi Kala means. So if all it is living according to the will of Vaheguru, I mean, that's the end of it. But what does that mean, though? How do you live in the will of Vaheguru? You're living in this world. And how can you live in this world as dunya vich kis tarah vichar sakde ho? How are you living your life, and how can you be connected to your higher self? So that's the challenge. That's what we want to establish. So I'm going to give you a little different perspective on what Chardi Kala means, and maybe give you some practical suggestions that maybe even I can also incorporate into my life. It's an opportunity for me to learn from reading about other people's jivani, other people's lives, and see how can I also change my life and live according to the will of Vaheguru. So ultimately, It comes from living a God and Guru-centered life. That's what it is. So living in the will of Vaheguru means that God and Guru are centered to your life. How do you make them centered to your life? That's the challenge. So, as I said before, it's not going to be an easy task defining Chardi Kala, because it's something that you feel. It's a state of contentment. It's a state of higher spiritual vibration where nothing affects you as much. None of the world's desires, world's ills or dukh sukh, jede bhi hunde ne, they don't affect you as much. So living a life full of contentment. But it's an inner state. It's a state of mind. It's not something that you do necessarily, but it's a state of mind, how you are existing in this world. And so inner state, now, everything that we do has two aspects to it. There's an outer physical aspect and an inner mental or spiritual aspect. So everything that we do in our life, whatever we're doing, we're going to school, we're going to having fun, we're going to our jobs, or the things happen to us, events happen, we react to the events. So we react to them in the outer physical realm, and then there is an inner experience. And it's the inner experience that counts. It's the inner experience that makes you who you are as a person. So the outer physical level is what happens to my physical body and my environment. That's the outer physical level. The inner level, what constitutes the inner level? What's inside of you? Mind. What else? Your thoughts. Thoughts are the same thing as mind. So mind is thinking of thoughts. What else is inside of you? Soul, the spirit. And then you have your emotions. The three things that are inside of you that make you who you are. It's the spirit, the higher spirit inside of you. Then your thoughts, your mind. Mind is the one that interprets whatever is happening in the outer world and labels it good or bad. So something happens to you in the outer world, and the mind says, okay, well, that's good or that's bad. If I get fired from a job, oh, that's bad. If I get a raise or promotion, that's good. That's the interpretation of our mind. The mind says, this is what's happening, how I react to the environment, react to what's happening in the outer world. So the inner world is made up of our spirit, our mind, and our emotions. Now, what happens is that mind becomes the dominant force inside of us. And the spirit takes a back chair. So it's not really, we're not listening to our higher self. See, if you listen to our spirit, because the spirit is connected to the higher spirit, our Atma is connected to the Paramatma. So when our spirit is connected to the Paramatma, then if you listen to that, then we will always be living in our higher self. We will always be doing things that God wants us to do, that Guru wants us to do. And that's living in Chardi Kala. So it's it's a state of mind. Now, how do we change our state of mind? That's the question. So Chardi Kala means that you align what's inside of you, your inner world, to the outer world. And this inner world, when I give seminars on self-improvement, on stress management, it's about how to control your mind. It's all the whole story, the whole life is about controlling your mind. Because ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਪੜਿਆ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਮਨ ਤੂੰ ਜੋਤ ਸਰੂਪ ਹੈ ਆਪਣਾ ਮੂਲ ਪਛਾਣ. Man is the thing that gives meaning to a life, and it creates the labels or even the dukh and sukh that we experience, even pain and suffering. Now, if let's say that you injure yourself and your leg is in pain. Now, is it your body that's suffering, or what is it that's suffering? What is experiencing the pain? Is it the body? Well, the leg is hurting, right? So is it the body that's suffering? Correct? Yes or no? Okay. Well, actually, that's not true. If you take the same body, it was suffering, having pain in the leg, and you give and you put that body under anesthesia. Now, are you feeling the pain if you're under anesthesia? Do you feel the pain? So if the body was what's experiencing the pain, then you would feel the pain, wouldn't you? So what happens under anesthesia? You're quieting the mind. The mind is gone. Mind is asleep. So now, whatever was experiencing the pain has gone to sleep, so you don't feel any pain. So it's the mind, and that's why when you hear of Gursikhs or other people who don't feel pain, we think about our Guru Sahibs and all the Shaheeds, and we say, well, how come they could not feel all that pain, all the suffering? Because it's not the physical body that experiences pain. It's the mind. When you control the mind, you can control everything. So it's all about controlling your mind. Mind is the doer of everything. It makes you do what you do. Now, you get up in the morning. What makes you get up? Is it the physical body? Sometimes you feel like getting up, sometimes you don't. What makes you not feel like getting up in the morning? It's the mind, right? So it's all a question of mind. And the reason I'm spending a little bit of time on this one is that it's important to understand how the mind plays a role, and how is it that mind is the thing that we have to control. Mind is a thing that we have to manipulate in some way. And why do we read Gurbani? Why do we do Simran? And we do Seva? It's all about controlling the mind. So mind that's an important point. The first point to remember is that the mind is the doer of all things. And if we want to really remain in Chardi Kala, we have to somehow control this mind. So the inner world, and make the spirit that's inside of us, which is lying dormant, so to speak, and at some moments it shows up. When you have a higher thought, when you have a thought of doing something good, when you have a thought of getting up in Amrit Vela. So what happens usually when you said, okay, yes, I want to get up at Amrit Vela, all of a sudden what happens? Mind says, oh no, you have to go to school tomorrow. Forget about it. We'll do it tomorrow. So the spirit comes out once in a while, but then the mind shuts it down. So the first thing about how to live in Chardi Kala is to be able to bring the spirit up and use the spirit, our soul. And what Guru Sahib did was, they told us how to lift our soul up and make soul the priority and make soul the doer of all things, not the mind, and control the mind. So that's the first thing that we need to understand, is that now you're seeing all this nature around you. So let's take an example. Let's say there's a plant over there. Now this plant has green leaves. Let's assume that there were some flowers here. You have blossoming flowers. Now, if you want to have really nice looking flowers, blossoming flowers, green leaves, what do you have to focus on? What do you have to focus on? What do you have to pay attention to? Do you just take a towel and clean the leaves? Now, what I could do is I could take a paintbrush and paint the leaves green. Will that make it green? Will that give it life? What do we do with ourselves if we want to do better? Let's take an example of an athlete. And a lot of you are, you exercise a lot. You're pretty healthy, and you go to the gym. If you really want to become a marathon runner, what do you have to do? Practice.
Concentrate on mind.
Eat well, exercise well.
Concentrate.
Is that right? Everybody agrees with that? Now, what is the difference between the person who wins the marathon and somebody like me who just walks it, or doesn't even walk it and give up halfway, even though I've trained? What is the difference between the winner and a loser like me? I exercise, I ate well, I may have even done the same kind of exercising that the winner does. What's the difference though? Persistence. Where does persistence come from? The inner self. Now, if you read the lives of some of the champion players, let's say Lance Armstrong, the cyclist from France who run the Tour de France. You have heard of Lance Armstrong, right? Yes, he still is, I guess. He is a champion. He came back after having suffered cancer. He overcame cancer and then went on to win the Tour de France again. Why? How did that happen? Yeah, steroids. Well, let's take other examples. Name any player that you relate to. Some of the best basketball players. Shaquille O'Neal, Shaq, Kobe Bryant. Well, I mean, I don't know any of the Canadians, so you got to forgive me. I'm from LA, so I can only remember the LA players. My point is that they all have to do some inner work. There has to be some discipline. If you read, there was a coach, the LA, John Wooden was a great coach. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a coach from UCLA. He's been coaching championship teams for many years. But he talks about the inner game. So it's not about just the physical aspects. It's not just about eating well and exercising. It's about the discipline inside. They have controlled their mind in one aspect, which is the sports aspect. Same thing with the tree. If you really want to have good, healthy trees, good, healthy flowers, blossoming flowers and green leaves, you don't have to focus on cleaning the leaves. What do you have to focus on?
Feed them nicely.
Nourishing the roots. The roots are important. The roots are what gets you where you want to go. The roots are the inner game. I mentioned the outer self and the inner self. The outer game, the inner game. The outer state, the inner state. So if you only focus on the outer state, if you only focus on exercising and eating well, you will never be a championship player until you address the inner game as well, until you address the mind. So it's all about focusing. It's all about controlling your mind. So you have to get up. I read somewhere one of the Olympic champions in the marathon in running was a lady from Alaska, and all she did was Alaska is always under snow. There was no place where she could exercise, where she could run, and all her training was run on a treadmill. Can you imagine that, running a marathon on a treadmill day in and day out? How can somebody do that? Has to come from here. Has to come from a discipline that is in your inner world. So coming back to Chardi Kala, it's about controlling the mind. It's about focusing on the inner world, not just focusing on the outer world. We do actions in the outer world, but they have to be determined by what's inside of us. And then let's determine what are those kind of actions. Now, people who live in Chardi Kala, they have a balance between the outer world and the inner world. Now, this is not a balance of family versus work versus finances. We talk about having a balanced life, that you should spend so much time at work and also spend time with your family and give of yourself to the needy. I'm not talking about that kind of balance. I'm talking about the balance of the outer world and the inner world. The inner world dictates what they do in the outer world. So their spirit. Now, our lives, people who are, if we are suffering, if we don't get what we want, if we feel pain, if we feel disappointments, if we get depressed, it's because there is an imbalance of the inner world and the outer world. That's not a life of Chardi Kala. So in Chardi Kala, there is this even keel. There is this balance between the inner and the outer world. Now, what causes all this, this pain and suffering? It's a life that you are living versus the life that your spirit wants. What you're here on this world for. If your desires, your inner desires, are not being met, let's say, for example, let me ask you, are you satisfied with your life? How many of you are very, very satisfied with the way life is going right now? Okay, good. So there is some balance between the inner world and the outer world. Now I'm not the person to judge. It's for each of you, each of us to judge for ourselves. Is there a lot of satisfaction in our life? Is there an even keel to our life? So there are some questions that you all need to ask, and maybe if you want to write them down, it's up to you. But there are some things that make you think about what is your life all about? Are you a kind person? Think about it. So I listed a few questions, about 10 to 15 questions that kind of just to stimulate your thought processes, the thinking of where you are. And then this will give you some clue as to what a life in Chardi Kala looks like. And then we'll define it further. Are you a joyful human being? Most of the time, are you in joy or not? So just think about it. Think of it to yourself. Are you a joyful, happy human being or not? Do you get offended easily? Can somebody say something to you and you get offended? When you get offended, why do you get offended? Let me ask you, sir. Why do you get offended? Anybody get offended, by the way? Maybe I'm not, okay. So if you get offended, why do you get offended? Yes?
Something hurts your ego.
Something hurts your ego. Where does ego reside? In the mind. So if you get offended, these are some of the characteristics that you have to assess yourself. Are you living a life of Chardi Kala? Do you get offended easily? If your ego gets hurt, that's a mind game. That's not a spirit game. That means you're not at Chardi Kala yet, to the level that you might think that you are. Do you get upset when others treat you unfairly? How many of you do? Okay. Why do you get upset? Because you think you're important. Again, because what gets hurt? Your ego gets hurt, right? So these are all the questions that you need to kind of maybe think about it when you go home. Are you cheerful with others even though you don't feel cheerful inside yourself? Or do you impose your mood on others? How many do that? Are you able to be cheerful when you don't feel cheerful inside? That means, well, okay, I'm not gonna make any judgments, but you have to decide for yourself. Are you being, at some point, are you being narcissistic? You are more important. I don't care about you. Because I don't feel good, I don't want to make you feel good. Because I'm important. Is that what a person in Chardi Kala would do? Do you ever stop to admire the beauty of nature? You know the phrase, stop and smell the roses. You ever do that? Now, this is a good opportunity. Yes, this is an atmosphere created for that. So when you have some free time, you have all the opportunity here to go and admire and be in solitude with nature. But on a daily basis, do you ever go to a place where, for no particular reason, you just stop and admire God's creation, admire Vaheguru, who created so much? Be in awe of the universe. Be in bewilderment. You know, what has God created on this earth? You will see people who are in Chardi Kala, they like going to solitude places. They like going into nature. Why did Guru Har Rai Sahib Ji have a garden full of flowers and medicinal herbs and all that? A man of God is attuned to nature. He will feel attracted to nature. A man who lives in Chardi Kala, a person who lives in Chardi Kala, is attracted to nature. They admire the beauty of nature. Are you a judgmental person? Do you judge others? How many judge others? Okay. Well, I'm glad that you admit to that. A lot of people will say, well, I'm not judgmental. Have you ever judged? For example, if you're walking in a lonely street at night and you see a bunch of Gursikhs come your way, do you feel fine? You feel like you're safe? Right? What if a group of 5 black dudes come along? Why do you feel fear?
Depends how they're dressed.
Depends on how they're dressed. These are all judgments we make. If you're a God-fearing person, we will not be affected by people around us. If we live in Chardi Kala, we're not afraid. And we're not judging just because they're African American individuals that they necessarily are going to hurt you. These are judgments that we have made because of our past experiences, whether real or imaginary. Are you judgmental? Do you talk about people behind their backs when they're not around? How many of you do that? Have you ever seen Bhai Jeevan Singh Ji or Master Ji or any of the Gursikhs that you revere most, that you've seen in your lives? Have you ever heard them talk about somebody else? They may talk about somebody in a loving tone about how good they are or what they've given to them, but have you ever heard them do anybody's nindya? That's a sign of a Chardi Kala person. Do you talk behind people's backs? Do you always think about what's missing in your life? Or what's present in your life? What do you think about all the time? Now that doesn't mean that you don't have any aspirations, that you should not aspire to be something. You're all growing up, you're in high school or college, and you have aspirations of becoming something. So it's not about not having any aspirations. But you always think of what's missing or what's present in your life. Are you thankful for all that God has given you, all that Vaheguru has given you in your life? Or are you always thinking about what's missing? What's the lack? What's lacking in your life? How many do that? Do you ever complain to people that things are not working the way you want them to work? Have you ever complained to somebody? Why do you complain? Why would you need to complain? Because things are not going your way. There's a lack of fulfillment in your life. Have you ever thought of this? Oh, mere paagi bade maare ne, ki kara main? You heard of people saying that, right? You're the unlucky person. You don't, luck doesn't follow you. Mere paagi maare ne, ki kariye? See, all these questions, the reason I'm spending some time on these is these are designed to help you to gauge where you are. If you really want to live a practical life, see, it's very easy to say, live in the will of Vaheguru. What does that mean, though? We have to make it practical for us. And I've tried to, sure there are other questions, there are other characteristics, but I've just tried to give you a sample of what some of the things that a God-fearing person, a person who lives in Chardi Kala, what kind of life they're going to be living. And if we want to live that life, we've got to start making some of those changes, and we'll come to that. We'll come to the methods section afterwards, so this is the diagnosis aspect. So we defined what Chardi Kala was, now this is the diagnosis aspect. And then we'll go to, how do we cure this? How do we live in the life of Chardi Kala? But so just to give an, so this is just to kind of help you to figure out what is it that's missing in your life? What's preventing you from living a life of Chardi Kala? What's preventing me from living a life of Chardi Kala? So, how do you live a life of Chardi Kala? How do you make these changes? So the first aspect is that you need to live a life of purpose. Now, what does that mean? See, everybody is on this earth with a specific purpose. And you could say, Guru Sahib has told us what this purpose is. Ke avar kaaj tere kita nakam, milsa sangat paj keval naam, right? Now, we read that every day. That's part of our nitname. But how many of us really understand that? And we read it, but then we say, well, I really can't do that. I mean, that's true, but I gotta live life. I was born, I'm on this earth. That does not mean that you give up life. So our kaaj tere kitna kaam does not mean that you give up this life that you're living and go in the jungles and start meditating, because the only thing that matters is to do Nam Simran. That's not what Guru Sahib told us to do. He said that we have to live our life in this world. We have to earn a living, we have to raise families, we have to do what's necessary for us to survive. And we cannot give up everything. So what does that mean though? So now, the highest purpose is to remember God, to have Him in our mind constantly all the time, to have our mind in meditation. So that's the highest purpose. But now, what is the secondary purpose? We are all born on this earth that you have a purpose to exist. Now, that purpose is hidden in your inner talents, your skills that you have. Some people like music. Now, so let me ask you, you're all college students or younger, and you haven't started your careers yet. What kind of aspirations do you have? What do you want to be when you grow up? Let me get some answers. What do you want to be when you grow up? Yes. I'm sorry? Optometrist? Okay. Anybody else? Nobody has aspirations? Yes? Teacher. Teacher, okay. So we have a teacher, we have an optometrist. Anybody else? Yes? You want to open your own restaurant? Okay, good. I haven't heard the three answers that most people give in India. What are those three typical answers?
Engineer.
You want to be an engineer? Okay, that's one of the three. What are the other two?
Doctor, lawyer.
Doctor or lawyer. So no doctors or lawyers in the house? Yes? Okay, now that's good. That's important. Now the question that I want to ask you is, have you ever wondered why is it that you love the things you love? Why do you want to open a restaurant? Why do you want to be an optometrist? Why does somebody want to be a dentist? Why does somebody want to be a doctor? Now, if the desire is coming from inside of you, by that what I mean is, if you're becoming a doctor not because of the prestige or because of the money or because of ego fulfillment, then you're responding to your higher purpose. You're responding to the spirit that's talking through you. Now, if you want to be a teacher, but your parents forced you to become a doctor, and you become a doctor, are you going to be happy? No. Why not? It's a great profession. I'm a doctor. But the thing is that everybody is born with a specific talent, with a specific desire to be, and that turns them on, that gives them passion for existence. Now, if you turn that passion, if you live that passion by being in service of others, see, that's living a purposeful life. Now, if I became a doctor because I want to have a Mercedes, I want to have a big house, I want to have a prestige in the society, and I want to be well known in the community that I'm a doctor, and my ego gets stoked, I'm not living a life full of purpose there. So that's going against what I was sent to this earth for. So the highest purpose is to remember God all the time. The second purpose is hidden in your desires, in your passions, in your the purpose of existence. So if you follow your dreams, follow what you really want to be, not because of what somebody tells you to be, not because of what society dictates, not because of what your parents want you to be, or anything else, or your mind taking over and saying, yeah, you want to be a teacher, but no, there's no money in teaching. You should go become a doctor. That's your mind forcing upon you, your ego is forcing upon the spirit what the mind wants. And that's why your life is out of balance. Or one of the reasons why life becomes out of balance is because you're not following what your purpose is. And you're going against your purpose. So now, if you want to be a teacher, and now you live your life with service to others, and you say, okay, I really like helping kids learn something and making them better human beings. So now you are serving humanity. You're serving God's creation. And when you're serving God's creation, it's not a chore for you. You want to get up early in the morning and go do your work, because now it's a chance to change somebody else's life. You're affecting somebody else's life. And if you are service to other people, other human beings, then your life is purposeful. Then you're living a life or going on the path towards living a life of Chardi Kala, because you're aligned to the purpose that God sent you on this earth for. Any questions about that? Does that make sense? Okay. So to live in Chardi Kala means less focus on your own self-interest, less focus on what the mind wants, and giving more precedence to the spirit inside of you, to follow what is it you really want to do with life. To be of service so first to God, second to Guru, third to humanity, to God's creation. So if you start living the life in that order, that first your life is to be devoted to God by doing Simran, by doing what Guru Sahib has taught us to do. Guru Sahib gave us the way to achieve godliness, to achieve oneness with Vaheguru. And so the first purpose is to remember God all the time. Second is to do what the practices that Guru Sahib has taught us, because those are the practices that will help us to achieve oneness with God as well. Why do we do Nitnem? See, we have made Nitnem just a chore, something that we have to do. Do we really focus on doing the Nitnem in the morning? And see, when your life is in Chardi Kala, every action that you do has a purpose. You're not doing anything without any purpose. So if you're just getting up in the morning because somebody told you you have to get up in the morning, and you're all still sleepy, and you just force yourself to get up, and you go and take a shower, and then sit down and do Nitnem, and you're falling half asleep, and you're done pura karna. Are you really doing that purposefully? How many of you do that? The first thing is to start focusing on what is it that you're doing, focusing on the actions, and make the actions coming from inside of you, not just a ritual, something that has to be done. So focusing on what God wants us to do, focusing on what Guru wants us to do, and then focusing on serving humanity and coming from our higher purpose. When you start doing that, then you're able to face all problems. Now, if you how many of you say on Friday, thank God it's Friday? Why do we do that? My aim, a few years ago when I started looking at this for myself, my aim was to start saying, thank God it's Monday. When you change from thank God it's Friday to thank God it's Monday, then your life is going to change. Do you understand what I mean by that? See, looking forward for the weekend means that you've been working so hard, you've been so tired during the week, that you're ready for a break. That means you're not living a life full of purpose. That means you're just surviving. You're just doing things because you have to do them, that you're supposed to do them. And then you're looking forward to the weekend. When that changes to, thank God it's Monday, that you're excited about going to work or doing something during that week that is going to change somebody else's life. So you're excited about getting up in the morning, not saying, oh no, it's Monday again, I gotta go to work. But saying, oh yeah, it's Monday, it's time to change a few more people's lives today. When that changes, your thought changes towards that, then you are starting to live a God-centered life. Then you're living a life of purpose. How much time do I have?
15 minutes.
Okay. So now, let's put that all together and see how we can change our life now. What kind of practices? This has come to the methods of curing this disease of not living in Chardi Kala. So the first, I'm going to give you 4 steps. There are many steps, but I think that if you start with these 4, and you start doing something every day on all these 4 things that I'm going to talk about, I think that you will be well on your, coming to this camp will be worth it. And we'll talk about what other things that you learned in the camp. But the whole idea is that you learn something from this camp, you go home and start making changes in your life. Otherwise, coming here, just learning information. Now, information is good. Nothing wrong with learning information. It's very important. You got to learn history. You've got to learn what happened in Guru's times. You've got to learn what happened in '84 and all the other periods of our history. But if you don't use that history to better your life, what good is knowledge? Knowledge does not change anything. How many of you have tried to eat healthy, lose weight, or create some good habit? How many of you know what to do to change that habit? And how many of you are doing it? See, having the knowledge does not change your life. So if all you're going to do is listen to all the speakers at the camp and maybe say, oh, they were good speakers, we learned a lot from them. But if you don't change your life by what you've learned, what Guru Sahib is teaching you, then it's not of any use. So let's look at the 4 steps that, in my opinion, will be very helpful for you. 4 secrets of living a life in Chardi Kala. First one, meditate. That's living a God-centered life. Guru Sahib has told us, "Aur kaaj tere kite nakam," and the reason is that everything has to start from there. If you don't start your day with spending some time accessing the higher spirit within you, if all you do early in the morning is you get up in a frenzy and you don't take time to sit down and relax and connect with Vaheguru, what happens to your day? You start the day off, see, as a physician, I talk about stress management. And what happens when you have an alarm clock, you wake up with an alarm clock and you're jarred awake. All of a sudden your heart is pounding. Your brain is already stimulated with all the stress hormones. And then you don't take a moment to sit down and relax. What happens? Those stress hormones don't come down. So you're already like, oh, I'm getting late, I gotta jump in the shower. You jump in the shower, you take a quick shower and you come out. I don't have time to do nicknames, so while I'm tying my dastar, Ekunkar, Satnam, Kartapur, Nirpo, Nirvat, am I paying attention to Bani or am I paying attention to the lard that are coming in the mirror?
Lord.
So you're already on the go. You don't have time to sit down. And that, if your day is starting like that, imagine what the rest of the day is going to be like. So it's very important to take the time in the morning to just center yourself, to get up. You know, once you start doing that, if you ask people who live life of Chardi Kala, can they do without their Amrit Vela? Amrit Vela becomes such an important aspect of their life, because without that Amrit Vela, there is a reason why Guru Sahib told us to get up at Amrit Vela. It's not to just force us to do something that we really don't want to do. There is a reason. It's the time. It's the time. And actually, you should, maybe if you have friends or family members that you do Amar Vala together with, that's fine. But you should also find some time to be in solitude, just between you and Guru Sahib, just between you and God. A time of silence. You meditate inside. Maybe it's just 5 minutes. But take some time to connect with the higher spirit. Ask for guidance from Guru Sahib. Connect with, so Simran shuru karoge, if you start your day with Simran, and then you're already making God center of your life. So that's God-centered life. You're starting the day with Simran, with Nitnem, you're centering yourself, your physical body. Remember when I talked about earlier, it's the game of inner world and the outer world. Right now, most of us are focusing on the outer world. We get up and we go. And we take a shower, we do whatever we eat, and then everything that we do, all our actions are about the physical aspects. We're not really taking care of our spiritual aspects. So if we start living a life, start the day with meditation. So, and the more time that you create for silence in your life, the more things will start to happen. See, this is the amazing thing about being God-centered. If you are less focused on what you're doing and more focused on just being who you are as a person and connecting with Vaheguru, things will automatically start to happen in your life. And you can ask any of the people that you respect, who you think are living a life of Chardi Kala, and ask them. There must be something about Amrit Vela that keeps them going, that they don't want to sacrifice at all. Yes? I'm sorry, say it again, let's be louder.
Doing the things you should be doing, help you be the person you should be?
Well, yes, you have to do what it is that you're supposed to do. Like you're studying, you're working, whatever it is that you're doing. But when I say being, you just have to stop and see who you are as a person. When you're doing something, are you doing it with purpose, or are you just doing it as a routine, or as something you're not even thinking about it, just doing it just for the sake of doing it? You're not really doing it with mindfulness, with full body and mind engrossed in that particular activity. You will start to radiate a different kind of energy around you. You know, have you seen that? You want to, let's say, Pai Jeevan Singh Ji. Who has been around Pai Jeevan Singh Ji? When you're around Pai Sahib, do you get angry or upset? Do you ever feel anything besides love or peace? Because when you are God-centered, you become that. You start radiating a different kind of energy around you, and people want to be around you. So that's what I want. Guru Sahib has given us the way. All of us have to become somebody, and we are all ambassadors of Sikhism. We're all ambassadors of how to live life. So that we start attracting people, will be attracted to you. What is it you have that's radiating out of you? And that's what comes when you start connecting with the silence, connecting in silence with Guru, with the Akal Purakh. Is that you start getting that energy, the vibration around you changes. And it strengthens your resolve, and it gives you more energy to deal with all the negativity around you. See, what happens is that we are all reactionary human beings. We react to environment. Something bad happens, and we get affected. Our mood is dependent upon our environment, right? So think about it. Does our mood change the environment, or does the environment change our mood? But when you're around somebody like Pai Jeevan Singh Ji or other people like that, does their mood change the environment? See, that's what we want. Our environment will change. Your negativity will start to change. So the first step is to start meditating in the morning. The morning is the best Amrit Vela, because that's when you will connect to the higher spirit. Second, Be open to everything, but attached to nothing. Be open to everything, I mean, have you ever said, oh, that's impossible? Somebody tells you something and says, oh, that's impossible, it's never going to happen that way. Why not? There's always a possibility of anything that can happen. So be open to all. Don't close your mind to any possibilities. But at the same time, be attached to nothing. Now, we're all attached to our lives, our attachments to worldly things. The thing is, whatever you focus on, now that doesn't mean that you have to give up everything in life and you go and become an ascetic. That's not what I mean, but be open to having everything in your life but not be attached, like Guru Gobind Singh Ji, when he threw away the gold bangles in the river. You heard about that, right? You all know about that Sakhi?
Yeah.
He lived in riches. He lived like a king. But when it came time, he threw everything away. He was not attached. He gave us an example of how we should live. Nothing wrong with having things around you, but not be attached to them. The more you are God-centered, the more these things will not mean much to you. What happens when you fail a test? Okay, let me rephrase that. What kind of emotion do you get when you pass a test or when you get a promotion?
You feel happy.
You feel happiness. What happens when you fail a test?
Sad.
Why?
You didn't pay attention.
Your effort's gone to waste.
Your effort's gone to waste. Is it really? What is failure? See, failure is, nothing is actually a failure. It's just a resolve. Have you ever, let me give an example. How many of you own a computer? How many of you have you heard of a person by the name of Michael Dell? Do you have Dell computers in your house or somewhere? How many of you know Bill Gates? Well, not personally. Do you know their story? Do you know that Michael Dell and Bill Gates were college dropouts? So they failed, right? From one aspect, they failed their courses because they could not pass, and they dropped out of college. What do you think would have happened if Bill Gates had actually passed his course? We may not even have Microsoft. What if Michael Dell had passed his course? We may not have Dell computers. I mean, who knows? But my point is this. Do not treat failure as failure. There's always a reason behind it. So that's the life of Chardi Kala is, Guru Sahib Japji Sahib says, Ketiyan dukh phuk sadmar, ebe daat teri datar. That pain and suffering is also your daat. You're giving it to us. So why is it that when we pass a course or we get a promotion, we're going to Guru Sahib and Sache Pasha, badi chardi kala ki thi, aap ji bahut bahut dhanwad. You've helped me to get this promotion, and I'm all grateful to you. Do we ever say that when we fail a course? Sache Pasha, I'm really grateful to you because I failed my course. Why not though? See, a person who lives in Chardi Kala is not affected by success or failure. And that's what we want, you want to achieve as well. So if you're open to everything and you're attached to nothing, attachment is not only to worldly desires, to your possessions, it's attachment to your ego. It's attachment to your wants and desires. It's attachment to what do you want to achieve in life. Many times failure leads you to go down a different path, and that path is what you were meant to be. I'll give you my example. I wanted to be a doctor. I went to medical school. and I wanted to be a cardiologist. But my first year, I went to a foreign medical school. I was not in the US medical school. And that particular year, when I passed my exam, they have a match system where after the match, you can apply to different places if you have not in the match program, and you'll be able to get a spot in an open position in the hospital. But that particular year, the authorities they played a trick on us. They did not give us our scores until a week after the match results had already been announced. So all the positions that were open were already filled by the time I got my scores, so I didn't have any openings left for me to apply to. So I was left with, instead of getting an internal medicine position, I had to scramble and find some position, and I wasted a year. But because of that, I decided to become a neurologist. And I ended up where I really wanted to be. And my life could not be any different than I really wanted initially. And I don't know if I would ever have been happier by being a cardiologist, because now I see people who are cardiologists, and I was like, was I crazy even wanting that? So things happen for a reason. So if you fail, it's not because you're a bad person. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because there's a reason for that. And so if you don't let failure discourage you, if you don't let failure bring you down, see, failing is not actually falling down. Failure is not getting back up again. Everybody falls down. And there's a saying that if you want more success, you double the rate of failures. Because if you're trying more and more things, you'll fail at those things. I always go on tangents, but since I'm on this point, do you know who invented the light bulb? Edison. Do you have any idea how many times he tried to get the light bulb to work before it actually became a reality? 6,000 times. He tried once, it didn't work. He said, okay, fine. He tried it 6,000 times. And at the end, what he said was, inventing the light bulb was a 6,000-step process. So failing, so to think about failure in a different light. You're not failing because you're not meant to do this, or all the reasons that you come up with. It's just something happens, and you just have to think about it as to what is it meant to be. Or sometimes it's just a test to see how strong is your conviction towards achieving that what you want to go, what you want. Or is one failure going to get you off track already? So if you're living a life of purpose, if you're living a life that you really want, let's say you want to become a teacher, but you start failing courses and you can't become a teacher, you're not getting any job, and then you say, oh, forget it, maybe I should not be a teacher, maybe I should just go get a job as a secretary somewhere. Then you have failed, because you're not living the life that you chose for you, and you let failure sidetrack you. That's not a life living a life full of chardi kala. Third, find your purpose. I already discussed more about this before. So it's about finding your passion. What stirs your soul? What is it that you really want? And what makes you get up? What stops you? So you have to ask yourself this question. What is stopping you? What stops most people? Why don't you go for what you want in life? What stops you? Fear. See, this is again fear. Fear comes from the mind. So think of it this way. What is the mind designed to do, and what is your spirit telling you to do? So if the mind gets fearful, fear of failure, fear of success. So to overcome fear, you have to start the other practices. You start meditating, you become stronger in your resolve inside, so that you don't let the negativity affect you. The last thing is change your thoughts. Very important. thoughts are magnetic. Have you ever noticed that when you start thinking a negative thought, or somebody does something bad to you, and you say, oh, this person did something bad, and you say, oh yeah, remember at that time also he did the same thing, and that time again, there's a pattern. What happens? Negative thoughts attract more negative thoughts to you. Thoughts are what determine your life. To change your thoughts, you change your life. What you think about, you attract towards you. If you're always thinking of what's not working in your life, if you're always thinking of, well, I don't have any money, I don't have any success, so you're focusing on not having, and what becomes more and more in your life is not having that what you really want. So it's about changing your thought, because your thoughts will attract, and that's what a Chardi Kala person does, is never thinks negatively. What's Chardi Kala is always thinking positive, always being. So when Guru Sahib has said that when you meet somebody and ask them how they are, you say, I'm in Chardi Kala. Why? Because the more you start saying that, the more you start focusing on Chardi Kala, the more Chardi Kala will enter inside of you. Okay. So just before I finish, I want to just take 1 minute. You all have your notebooks with you, I take it, right? What I'd like you to do, if you don't have your notebooks, and I think this is very important. After, either you do it now for those of you who have it, or if you don't, when you go after this lecture on the break, I want you to do something for me. Not for me, actually for you. If you really want to have this camp mean something to you, then make some decisions. And the sooner you start writing those decisions down, see, writing does something to your psyche. When you just think a thought, it is not real. You have many thoughts in the day. You have 16,000 thoughts in the day. Every human being has their, I don't know who counted them, they said there are 16,000 separate thoughts that we have in the day. Thoughts come and go, they're not real. What becomes real is what you write down. So I want you to go back to your rooms and write down something. And on a clean sheet of paper, maybe you have those notebooks, maybe on the last page, I want you to start writing a life of Chardi Kala. What does that life of Chardi Kala mean to you? And what are some of the things that you're going to start doing when you leave this camp and you go back home, when you're not in this environment? What small things you're going to start in your life that are going to make you walk towards a life of Chardi Kala? If you do that, then listening to me and listening to all the other speakers will have been very fruitful. Otherwise, it was just entertainment. I'm not here to entertain. I'm here to change lives. Guru Sahib is here to change lives. I'm not doing anything by myself. Guru Sahib is doing everything. But what he's saying, or what he's about, is changing your life. If you really want to change your life, if you want to live a life of Chardi Kala, write down 5 things before you go. It can be simple things. I'm going to get up early in the morning and spend 10 minutes in Simran. Simple as that. Something more than you're doing right now. I'm going to be kind to somebody else. I'm going to change my thoughts. But it's something it has to be concrete. It's not something, oh, I'm going to be full of love. What does that mean? I'm going to start treating my younger brother or younger sister who I've been fighting with all the time. I'm going to start listening to them. Start making some changes in your life. So write down. Are you willing to do that? How many of you are going to make a commitment now, right now, that before you leave this camp, you're going to write down at least 5 things that you're going to do after you leave this camp that are going to change your life? Okay, this is your sub. Okay? Any questions about that? Okay, with that, I will stop here, and I thank you for listening to me and giving me the time to make some suggestions that will improve your life. I hope I have not said anything that has hurt anybody's feelings. And I pray to Guru Sahib that whatever I've said, that I also start inculcating in my life, and that we all start living a life full of Chardi Kala. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.